But I don't see any way to cast it. I don't see any way to cast it. I don't see any way to cast it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for tonight's virtual event, Texas Takes Shape, a history in maps from the General Land Office. I am Anjali Zucchi. I'm the Executive Director of the Friends of the Texas Historical Commission, the organization hosting this event tonight. We are really, really glad and thankful that you have stopped by, and we encourage you to get to know more about us if you don't already. Many of you are supporters and frequent attendees of our virtual events, and we thank you for taking that time. The Friends of the Texas Historical Commission is the nonprofit partner to the Texas Historical Commission, the state preservation organization. We provide support from private philanthropy for historic preservation efforts across the state. And you can get involved by checking out our What We Do page on our website at thcfriends.org. I want to thank those of you that have chosen to support us with donations through these events. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. And my colleague, Lorelei Gonzalez, is on this call as well. And she, I know, joins me in thanking you all. I want to acknowledge all of our commissioners, Friends board members who have joined tonight. Thank you so much for being here. We're really happy to see you. And if you don't follow us on social media, please do. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel where recordings of these virtual events are shared with everybody. They're, open source. You can access them anytime. You can share them forward with folks that you think might be interested. We'd love to be connected with you through one of these channels, so please do join us. Our social media is where you'll get information about future events, including the one that we have scheduled for August 14th at 6 p.m., Make Mine Modernism, John S. Chase and Mid-Century Architecture for Austin's Black Middle Class. This event will be presented by Dr. Tara Dudley from the University of Texas at Austin's School of Architecture. A few housekeeping items before I introduce today's presenters. We would really appreciate it if you could keep your microphones on mute during the presentation. We will encourage you to unmute yourself and ask a question as we see questions come through. In the meantime, please do drop your comments, questions in the chat box. Tracy, Lorelei, and I will be screening those questions and making sure that we have them lined up to pass them on to our presenters at the end of their presentation. So we will have a Q&A session at the end. Tomorrow, everyone who is registered for tonight's events, whether you've joined tonight or not, will receive an email with a link to the recording of the event so you can share it or watch it again. We will also provide a list of resources, book recommendations, etc., that our presenters may mention. So please be on the lookout for that email. With that, it is my privilege to introduce our presenters this evening. We have two of them joining us from the General Land Office, starting with James Harkins, who is a sixth-generation Texan and is the Deputy Director of the Texas General Land Office's Archives and Records Division. James graduated from Texas State University, San Marcos, with a bachelor's degree in communications in 2005, with a minor in business. In 2010, he received a master's degree in public administration, also from Texas State, and for his graduate thesis, he was the 2010-2011 James W. McGrew Research Award winner from the American Society for Public Administration. James has worked for the Texas General Land Office since May 2005 and manages the Save Texas History Program. He has led the curation of multiple exhibits at the Whitty Museum, the Houston Museum of Natural Science, the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum, and the Bob Bullock Texas State History Museum. He is also former president of the Texas Map Society and is active with several other organizations, including the Texas State Historical Association and the Bullock Texas State History Museum. And he's a member of the Alliance for Texas History. He is a recipient of both the Cecilia Steinfeld Fellowship for Research in the Arts and Material Culture and the Larry McNeil Research Fellowship in Texas Legal History. Our second speaker tonight is Brian Stauffer, who is the Director of Public Services in the Archives and Records Programs Division at the Texas General Land Office. Brian is a certified archivist and holds a PhD in Latin American history. He did say he's not the doctor that can provide an emergency service, but he is a doctor nevertheless, in Latin American history from the University of Texas at Austin. His research focuses on religious and agrarian history of Mexico and Mexican Texas in the 19th century. His published works include the monograph Victory on Earth or in Heaven, Mexico's Religionero Rebellion. I apologize if I...
Pretty good.
Okay,
Religionero.
good, awesome. Published by the University of New Mexico Press in 2019, and Where the Cult is in the Hands of the People, Enlightened Catholicism and Colonization on the Texas Frontier in the Southwestern Historical Quarterly of the Texas State Historical Association, right? Did I get that right, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And that was published in 2021. Thank you both, James, Brian, for being here tonight, for getting all the materials together. We're really excited for you to share your book. And I forgot to mention, Brian and James are co-authors of the book, Texas in Maps. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that right. Texas Takes Shape, A History in Maps. That has been published by UT Press, and they'll be sharing information from the book, and also, I guess, a little bit about how the book came about. So over to you, Brian and James.
Well, thank you for having us. We always appreciate working with the Texas Historical Commission and with the Friends Group, and sharing the resources of the Texas General Land Office. And even if we messed up on the first time that we said the name of the book, we guarantee you that we will say it enough times to where it will stay in everybody's minds, and you'll say, wow, I really need a copy of that book too. So thank you, Anjali, Lorelei, and Tracy for having us. We're really excited to be a part of this. I want to say thank you to Commissioner Dawn Buckingham, who is the Commissioner of the General Land Office. She came on board about 2-ish years ago, and she's been a great supporter of the Save Texas History program, of the Archives and Records Division, and of supporting Texas history overall. And I think now we get to the most difficult part of the presentation, which is trying to share our screen, because Brian and I put together a really great PowerPoint presentation so we can have some really cool visuals to look at, so you don't have to just look at us. So I'm going to attempt to do that and get it right on the first try. Oh, man.
Second or third try is not so bad either.
How about that? Brian, can you
there you go.
see all my notes that I don't want everybody to see, so everybody thinks that I'm winging this?
Nope, looks good.
Okay, cool. Like we said, the name of the book is Texas Takes Shape, A History and Maps from the General Land Office. It's a book that was about 5 years in the making. We really started working on it at the tail end of 2019. We had a gem of an idea, and we wanted to move forward with it. And then whenever COVID happened, we really kind of hit the ground running with it. We needed a project to be able to work on from home. And so one thing that we're able to do is sneak into the building during COVID, take a couple of books home, read, do research, and access all of the maps that we put together for this project through our website, historictexasmaps.com. And so, again, that book is called Texas Takes Shape, A History and Maps from the General Land Office. I should also mention, Brian and I are not the only authors on this book. Mark Lambert, who is the Senior Deputy Director of Heritage, is an author, and so is Patrick Walsh. I should also mention that there are several other GLO staffers, past and present, who helped contribute to this book and make it come to life. Let me hide this real fast. Okay, need to hide this. Okay. So I'd also like to acknowledge that because of the generosity of several benefactors, this book was able to be printed in full color and at full size to make it a coffee table book that would really, one, overpower all of the other coffee table books, and also be something that is visually pleasing. Whenever we first started working on the project, we wanted to make sure that it was available to as many people as possible and as at a reasonable price point as possible. Because I know whenever I go to a bookstore and I see a really big, pretty coffee table book, I almost dread looking at the price tag. And with this one, the sticker shock is not going to get anybody at $45 through work that we were doing with UT Press to keep the price down. We think that as many people in Texas who are interested in Texas maps will be able to get their own copy of this. And so we want to thank Bill and Teresa Price, Allison and Steve Cook, Kenneth and Emily, Dr. John Parker, Lanny and Carla Ottoson, Colin Corrigan, Julie Montgomery, Len and Tom Phillips, John and Diana Cobb, Larry and Mary Wiggum, Nedra Foster Townsend, Mark and Marianne Vaca Lambert, Mickey and Susan Dorsey. And we also want to thank several institutions, including the Summerlee Foundation, the Texas Historical Foundation, the Texas Map Society, the Texas State Genealogical Society, the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society. And finally, I want to say that this project is a recipient of the 2021 Cecilia Steinfeld Fellowship for Research in the Arts and Material Culture from the Texas State Historical Association. So I also want to take this opportunity to promote an event that the Texas General Land Office has coming up in November. Our Save Texas History Symposium is going to be themed on this book, and we will have 9 speakers speaking on different topics that relate to each of the 9 chapters in the book. You can register for that event right now at savetexashistory.org. And that event again will be on November 6th and 7th. And I should mention that the Texas Historical Commission Friends Group is a sponsor. It will end up being a sponsor of that, along with San Felipe State Historic Site. The image that you're looking at right now is the Alamo Defenders Heritage Map of Texas. This is a map that was recently released by Commissioner Don Buckingham. What the map shows is the approximate location of the 245 different land grants that were issued by the Republican state of Texas to the heirs of the men who died at the Alamo to reward their service for giving their life while fighting at the Alamo. It uses original records found at the GLO, including both land grant files and the GLO's Republic of Texas muster roll, along with several outside sources. This map was quite a project to work on. It has artwork that was inspired by the frescoes that are found inside the Alamo Church. The 2 flags that were flown at the Alamo are shown, and the map also includes a list of all of the Alamo defenders, the 189 men who were there, as well as a comprehensive list, as far as we know, of Alamo survivors and non-combatants, the women and children who were there, as well as several enslaved people who were part of that engagement. So here's a little bit of a closer look. We plotted all of the original land grant, bounty and donation land grants that were given to the Alamo defenders. The heirs of the defenders located land in 124 of Texas's 254 present-day counties. And for their sacrifice, the state and Republic of Texas paid over 300,000 acres to Alamo defenders and their heirs in land, which was a common thing for serving in the Republic of Texas. So it's real neat to be able to visualize that connection between the Alamo defenders and the General Land Office today. Because this map is brand new, if there's anybody who would like to get a copy, if you make a donation at savetexashistory.org for $50 or more, you will receive a signed copy of this map. And now we'll talk a little bit about the book. We'll actually talk a lot about this book. So as caretakers of one of the state's finest map collections, the Texas General Land Office staff have long dreamed of writing a definitive treatment of Texas cartographic history. Texas Takes Shape, a history and maps from the General Land Office, is the result of over 10 years of planning and research. Momentum grew in 2015 when the GLO partnered with the Bullock Texas State History Museum to curate several small map exhibits from the GLO's collection. Around this time, a collaboration with the Whitty Museum in San Antonio led to Mapping Texas from Frontier to Lone Star State, which was a major exhibition exploring Texas's formation through maps. The exhibit has since traveled widely and has been seen by over 2 million people at the Whitty Museum, the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library. Following Mapping Texas, the exhibit Connecting Texas, 300 Years of Trails, Rails, and Roads debuted at the Whitty Museum, highlighting transportation evolution from indigenous pathways to federally funded highways. Throughout the curation process of these exhibitions, GLO staff researched hundreds of individual maps, developing a broad understanding of the cartographic resources available at the agency, which helped us form a natural outline for this book. As GLO staff continued to research, increasingly we turned to James C. Martin and Robert Sidney Martin's Maps of Texas in the Southwest, 1513 to 1900, which was released in 1984 and then reprinted in 1999. We consider this book to be the preeminent book on the subject to date, and we hope that our book will let that one rest. As we have relied on Martin and Martin, those authors built on James Perry Bryan's 1961 Texas in Maps, which was based on his map exhibit of the same year. The last thing that Martin Martin wrote in Maps of Texas in the Southwest was, if our volume has a similar influence as Texas in Maps on another researcher, we will be pleased. We hope that Texas Takes Shape picks up where Martin and Martin left off 40 years ago, and that this book will have as significant of an impact on the study of Texas cartography as that benchmark publication. And if there's one thing about Texas that we all know, it's the shape. Texas's unique, irregular shape is recognized around the world, having become an icon weighted with various cultural and political meanings. Today, it operates as a symbolic synonym for big and brash, independent and innovative, diverse and dynamic. It also conjures romanticized images of the Old Southwest, yet the state's outline, much like its character, is far from timeless. Viewed from 10,000 feet, Texas's shape might be characterized as being in constant historical flux, a geography exceptional precisely because of its instability. Such geographic dynamism owes in large part to Texas's place as a historical crossroads. Long before Europeans stepped foot on this continent, indigenous people forged trade networks, crisscrossing its vast grasslands and hilly plateaus to connect city-states in present-day New Mexico and Illinois with the even larger polities of central Mexico. Long a meeting ground of diverse peoples, the region became even more complex and fragmented with the arrival of French and Spanish explorers, who, along with indigenous nations, newly empowered by horse culture, turned Texas into a crossroads of modern empire by the early 18th century. In the Spanish era, Texas looked more like a handful of dispersed dots on the map than a clearly bounded territory the size of a European nation. And the sovereign powers who played the most important role in defining and defending territorial boundaries were not Spanish or French, but Caddo, Wichita, Comanche, and Apache. Moreover, just as Spain had reached a tenuous peace with indigenous powers, independence movements originating in Britain's 13 North American colonies and in Mexico's central lowlands reshaped the region again. Mexico moved to integrate the frontier province into its federal system after 1824, but a resurgence of hostilities with indigenous groups and the expansion of the U.S. cotton frontier complicated matters. In 1845, after experimenting with 9 years with independent nationhood, under whose auspices its leaders asserted Texas's most grandiose territorial claims, Texas reconfigured its borders again shortly after joining an expansive United States. In doing so, it ignited a conflict that transformed the North American West and helped lead to the Civil War. Within its unstable boundaries, meanwhile, a host of competing interests, from Comanche hunters to settlers, speculators, and even land commissioners, struggled to shape Texas in their own image. Cartography proved a key component of these struggles over Texas's changing geography. Maps and power shared a strongly reciprocal relationship. On one hand, maps could function as straightforward tools of exploration, warcraft, and administration, a practical means of enacting control over a given territory. Far from being simple imperial foot soldiers, though, cartographers also actively influenced territorial contest by representing the land and its peoples in particular ways. For example, by depicting areas populated by Native Americans and others as blank, decorating charts with fanciful images of giants or cannibals, or drawing boundaries to suit imperial claims, mapmakers created visual arguments and framed viewers' perspectives. This rise of commercial cartography significantly democratized this process, as an increasing literate population in both hemispheres clamored for maps to make sense of the great transformations taking place in North America. And this In this context, cartography served to persuade as much as to inform. Even after the great territorial contests over Texas were resolved in the mid-19th century, cartography maintained its power. It underwrote property rights, gave rise to new technologies like barbed wire, brought towns into focus, informed local and state governance, and guided regional infrastructure development. Put simply, maps are both products and agents of history, and they are almost universally the result of interdisciplinary collaboration. From the age of the houses of Mercator and Ortelius to the colonial pairings of Austin Tanner and De Cordova and Cruzbauer, and up to the present day where cross-agency teams at the GLO work to create modern maps highlighting Texas history, cartography has been a synergistic process. It relies on shared knowledge and the input not just of cartographers, but of varied artists, designers, researchers, and tradespeople. Much like the creation of the maps charting Texas's borders, the making of the state's modern shape and internal social geography was anything but singular. Rather, in tandem with larger geopolitical and economic processes, the region's geography has been repeated and reimagined by generations of cartographers on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, with motives and means as diverse as Texas's people. As the caretakers of the state's public domain, the GLO occupies a central place in Texas's cartographic history, and its archival collections are a vital resource for studying this complex story. Since its inception, the agency has served as both a repository for and creator of maps, a bridge between Texas's cartographic past and future. The Constitution of the Republic of Texas established the GLO in 1836, and the agency opened in 1837. As a centralized successor to the various colonial land offices of Mexican Texas, the GLO's most important initial task was assembling all of the records relating to land distribution in Texas prior to 1836. Its first commissioner, John P. Borden, thus collected tens of thousands of Spanish and Mexican titles, field notes, and plats dispersed among the various land commissioners, impresarios, surveyors, and local officials who helped settle Texas under Mexican law. The GLO's Spanish collection, therefore, represents a crucial base layer, superimposed though it might be upon older layers of indigenous occupation of Texas's modern map. This initial phase of compilation then gave way to one of creation. Building on Mexican precedents, the Republican state of Texas repeatedly turned to its public lands as a means for development. It issued land grants to veterans, early settlers, and industrialists and developers to augment its population, raise revenues, and fund public education and infrastructure projects. Such a strategy meant an increasingly important geographic role for the GLO, whose surveyors and draftsmen were entrusted with graphically illustrating the dispossession of the public domain at various levels. Far from a simple preserver of these crucial agency-produced maps, the GLO has in recent times revitalized the agency's historic role as an active collector of Texas cartographic history. Since 2010, the agency has acquired over 400 rare printed and manuscript maps through purchase and donation, which help contextualize the GLO's existing records, enrich historical research, opportunities, and increase public engagement with the state's geography. The early chapters of this book draw heavily from these recent acquisitions. From a broad perspective, these maps use regional views to trace the Lone Star State's history. Such views include some of the earliest and most important depictions of the Western Hemisphere, North America, New Spain, the North American Southwest, Mexico, the United States, and the Republic and state of Texas. In some ways, however, all history is local history, and this is where the GLO's collections truly stand apart from most other map repositories in Texas. Agency records provide a multi-layered view of Texas's land development, with thousands of regional, colonial, and county maps, as well as illustrations of cities and towns and tens of thousands of individual land grant sketches. The GLO map collection covers every single acre of Texas land. In addition to some of the most important published maps in the history of Texas and North America, this book also features many unpublished manuscript maps exclusive to the GLO that trace the evolution of Texas and the American Southwest. Taken together, its collection of rare published maps and original manuscripts make the GLO one of the great public cartographic resources for the study of Texas history. This book traces Texas's cartographic history from 1525 to the present through a carefully curated exploration of the GLO's 45,000-piece map collection. This book is divided into two parts. Part one, defining Texas, which I'll share the history of three maps with you in just a little bit. It's called Defining Texas. Is organized into 5 chronological chapters that serve to define Texas's external boundaries. These maps begin with the earliest European published depictions of the Americas in the 16th century and finish with the themed commissioner maps of the state of Texas. These chapters follow a periodization familiar to students of Texas history, exploration and discovery, inter-imperial conflict and Spanish rule, the Mexican national period, the Republic of Texas, and modern statehood. Yet the inclusion of maps at various scales, from the hemispheric to the cadastral, permits a unique kaleidoscopic view of our state's changing borders and boundaries. Part 2, which Brian will discuss, is called Developing Texas. It consists of 4 chapters that explore the agency's rich trove of thematic maps, including military cartography and the railroad, county, and city maps that describe how Texas developed internally. And then if a map's neat line serves to contain the viewer's gaze, the content within its frame, this book also contains in each chapter a Beyond the Neat Line essay, which moves beyond the borders of a single map to synthesize cartographic trends, explore mapping techniques, and introduce contributors often obscured from view by conventional narratives of map history. There's some really neat information in these Beyond the Neat Lines. And so I think that even if you don't need to know 500 or 1,000 words about each map, I think you will enjoy the essays that are associated in each of these Beyond the Neat Line features. So big, bold, and colorful like the state itself, this book tells the comprehensive story of Texas's historical shape-shifting from the perspective of its oldest state agency and guardian of its public lands. It takes advantage of the diversity of perspectives, scales, and formats of the maps in the GLO's collections to build upon the crucial work of an earlier generation of Texas map historians, including Martin Martin, James P. Bryan, and Thomas W. Streeter, among several others. Like Texas writ large, the story of this book that it tells is complex. From contested continent-spanning imperial claims to individual land grants, Texas takes shape. A History and Maps from the General Land Office examines the history of efforts to chart Texas with the understanding that for a place to be claimed, it first needed to be mapped. It situates each map within Texas's political and cultural context and within the history of cartography to help its readers better understand how maps helped Texas take shape. And now I'm going to get a little bit into the maps themselves. In part 1, we call it Defining Texas because it traces in a more or less chronological fashion the various struggles among nations and empires to define Texas both spatially and politically. What kind of place is it? Whose flag should it fly? Is it indigenous, Spanish, French, American? How does it fit into these larger empires or nation states? What should its boundaries be? Literally, what shape should it have? Mapmakers hazarded answers to all of these questions from the 16th all the way to the mid-19th century, when the U.S.-Mexican War, the Gadsden Purchase, and Compromise of 1850 seemed to have put them to bed once and for all. Their interest in the subject were scientific, historical, imperial, religious, commercial, sometimes all at once. Let's start with some of the French imperial cartography from the early 18th century, 2 maps by the prolific and influential Nicolas de Fer. And here he is, with a delightful wig. Nicolas de Fer published over 600 sheet maps between 1687 and 1720, with many of them geared towards advancing French imperial interest. The 2 turn of the 18th century de Fer maps in our book appeared in various editions of his Atlas Guerreau. The first charts the progress and demise of LaSalle in his ill-fated search for the mouth of the Mississippi River. The second depicts present-day Mexico and Central America, highlighting the relative position of silver mines in northern New Spain adjacent to French claims. Together, they offered the French a view of North America that made the case for further encroachment on Spanish possessions and encouraged additional fortifications along the Mississippi River. Here's one of his maps. This map tracks LaSalle's travels along the Gulf Coast and within Texas's eastern interior. It also includes the route of the Spanish expedition dispatched from Monclova to intercept the French intruders after one of LaSalle's ships, l'Amable, pardon my French on that, wrecked on Matagorda Bay in 1689. La Salle eventually lost all 4 of his ships, leading to 3 expeditions on foot that failed to locate the mouth of the Mississippi River. Amid increasing conflict between French colonists and indigenous residents, some of La Salle's men, led by crewman Pierre Duhat, carried out a mutiny in which they ambushed and murdered La Salle near present-day Navasota County. Let's zoom in on that. This title block is a great example of why we say in the introduction that maps are products of history. They record events and situate them in geographical space, though obviously those events are depicted from a particular viewpoint and often advance a particular agenda. Here, for example, Defer illustrates the mutiny against La Salle on the left and Duhat's subsequent death at the hands of La Salle loyalists to your right. A year after charting the upper Gulf Coast, Defer shifted his focus to the region's southern portion, mostly centered on New Spain. This map appeared in the second edition of his Atlas Giro. Defer again outlined Spanish territory in red. New Spain stretches from Santa Fe on the Rio Bravo in the north to present-day Panama in the south and includes the Florida Peninsula and Cuba to the east. French territory in green covers the rest of the Gulf Coast. Lacking inland borders to differentiate between the two empires, Defer portrays present-day Texas at a crossroads, well within Spanish territory, yet seemingly part of French Louisiana. The presence of La Salle's abandoned fort further hints at French designs on Texas. This map's most striking geographic feature is northern Mexico's famous mines of Santa Barbara. Here we also have a prime example of how maps can act as agents of history. That is, they shape the course of history by making geographic arguments or suggesting action for historical actors to pursue, or they become wrapped up in larger contemporary dramas relating to the control over territory or knowledge. Although Conquistador Rodrigo Rio de Losa discovered the mines in 1567, Spanish imperial secrecy dictated that they appeared infrequently on maps of the period. The mines' appearance here shows how Spain's march northward in search of silver set off a scramble for the present-day American Southwest. Defer places the mines improbably close to the Rio Bravo, the Rio Grande, within the reach of potential French claims. His embellishment of the mines effectively draws an X on the sheet for French forces to find treasure, perhaps building on decades-old plans for an invasion of New Spain via the Rio Bravo. As the silver mines developed into a significant economic asset, Spain responded to French determination to gain a foothold in the region by settling Texas and creating a buffer between French Louisiana and the silver towns of northern Mexico. So even in a small way, maps like these help shape Texas's destiny. Viewed together, Nicholas Defer's 1701 and 1702 maps of the Gulf Coast represent one of the earliest cartographic efforts to establish French imperial claims in Texas. And given the popularity of Defer's atlas, which was reissued several times both during his life and after his death, we can reasonably say that these maps were influential in shaping the French literati's view of North America and Texas. I'm going to jump ahead in time now from the early 18th century to the early 19th century, and from commercial maps to the kind of practical administrative maps that are really the GLO's bread and butter. And Stephen F. Austin's connected map could be considered the pinnacle of the genre. If you haven't seen it, you should schedule a tour at the GLO archives and see one of our crown jewels. It truly is amazing at over 7 feet by 7 feet. In addition to his, the map that's on screen is not the connected map. In addition to his contributions to colonization of Texas, Stephen F. Austin also deserves credit as one of the region's most important cartographers. When Austin arrived in 1821, geographic knowledge of the province was still rudimentary. In the late 18th century, Spanish soldiers and engineers sent to fortify the frontier made significant progress on mapping the Mexican Northeast, and geopolitical developments associated with the Louisiana Purchase yielded more regional maps by Zebulon Pike, Juan Pedro Walker, and Fray Jose Maria Puelles in the first decade of the 19th century. But views of Texas based on direct observation were still lacking. Keeping close to his surveying roots, in 1822, Austin first charted the rivers and bays of Texas to locate the land best suited for his colony. He also mapped Galveston Bay on behalf of the Mexican government, which was interested in developing a northeastern port. After 1828, he combined survey data with information gleaned from authorities like Puelles and General Miri Tehran to produce maps of Texas that became the primary cartographic references for the territory for over a decade. Perhaps more important to Austin's project, however, was the creation of working cadastral maps. Austin's impresario contracts encompassed a vast swath of Texas's central eastern bottomlands, and Mexican colonization laws allowed settlers to locate their land anywhere within the colony's boundaries. Because of this, connected maps showing granted and available land became crucial to the operations of his colony land office at San Felipe. In 1833, Austin tasked Gale Borden, a land surveyor and Austin's colonial secretary, with creating a map of the lands granted via the impresario's first, second, and coastal colony contracts. The enormous undertaking included all land grants between the San Jacinto and the Vaca rivers below the San Antonio Road, covering approximately 15,400 square miles in 19 present-day counties. Borden began work in 1833, but the Texas Revolution disrupted it. Fearing the destruction of records by the Mexican Army, Acting Land Commissioner Robert Peebles delivered Austin's administrative papers via wagon to Fort Jessup, Louisiana on March 24, 1836. They remained there until October of 36. Austin did not live to see the map of his colonies completed. After his unexpected death on December 27th of 1836, James F. Perry, Austin's brother-in-law and the executor of his estate, oversaw the completion of the connected map. This was no vanity project. Although Austin's colony had ceased by this time, the Republic of Texas still needed all the information it could get about the titles issued under Mexican sovereignty, which would form the foundation of the new land system overseen by the GLO. This map was essentially a pilot project for how the GLO would make maps in the future. To comply with the decree of the Texas Congress ordering impresarios to turn over all information about lands granted under their Mexican contracts, Perry asked Borden to hire as many assistants as he needed to complete this map. The latter enlisted the help of several allies, along with his brothers Thomas H. and John P. Borden. John P., who would soon be appointed as the first land commissioner of the Republic of Texas, ultimately took the lead on the massive project. We don't know who actually drew the map, though the three Borden brothers are credited. The connected map provided striking visual evidence of Austin's activities as an impresario. Most of the grants appearing on the map are 1 league or quarter league tracts of land. Clustered along river courses, each survey contains the name of the original grantee and the dimensions of the grant in varas. A network of roads connects the colony headquarters at San Felipe to newer settlements such as Brazoria, Matagorda, and Harrisburg. Overall, the map provides the best representation of its era of Texas's transformation under Mexican colonization programs. It also established the baseline for subsequent GLO county mapping. Composed of 7 separate paper sheets spliced together and measuring over 7 feet square, the connected map is one of the oldest cadastral maps in the GLO archives. It is also one of the largest, requiring a custom-made map cabinet to house it in the archival vault. The original connected map was an active record of the GLO and was thus subjected to wear and tear through repeated use. Additionally, it likely suffered from the effects of frequent moves. After its creation at San Felipe, the map was moved to Fort Jessup, Louisiana, and Columbia, Texas, before being finished at Peach Point. It was finally moved to Austin, from which Sam Houston's emissaries attempted unsuccessfully to remove it during the Archives War of 1842, and at that point it was held onto by the citizens of Austin for several years. It remains one of the most important artifacts of the Mexican impresario era in Texas. And now I want to move forward just a little bit more to Jacob de Cordova's map of the state of Texas. These last 2 maps I'm going to talk about are perhaps the best illustration of how maps trace the shaping of Texas. They're 2 maps that straddle a key moment in Texas's territorial evolution. That is, from independent republic to U.S. state, and from grand, almost hallucinatory territorial claims of the Republic of Texas to the clearly defined state boundaries. These are the very popular maps of Jacob de Cordova. Cordova was born into a prominent Jewish family in Jamaica, where he founded his newspaper. In 1836, he arrived in New Orleans, where he set up shop shipping supplies to the Texian revolutionaries. He dabbled in local commerce and politics in Galveston and Houston after the Revolution, and in 1847, he won a seat in the Texas House of Representatives. The following year, he and his partners laid out the town site of Waco. Foreseeing a land boom in Texas after the U.S.-Mexican War, de Cordova acquired vast land holdings in the state, reportedly over 1 million acres, and began aggressively promoting Texas to the world. And what better way to do that than with a map? De Cordova commissioned his map of Texas in 1849. He turned to the GLO, where he hired draftsman Robert Krusbauer to produce it from agency records, presenting only the eastern two-thirds of the state. The map partially replicates Stephen F. Austin's view of Texas, though it is considerably more detailed. The richly detailed map earned endorsements from land commissioners Thomas William Ward and George W. Smythe, as well as from Sam Houston and other U.S. statesmen, which appear on the map's lower left corner as lithographic reproductions. This was not the end of its political life either. Shortly after its publication, the map was used as evidence in a senatorial debate between Sam Houston and Jefferson Davis regarding the viability of a Southern Railroad route from Texas to the Pacific. Allegedly, that was a fairly heated argument between Houston and Davis. The 1851 edition contains several, made 2 years later, the 1851 edition contains several notable updates, including a bolder indication of the Fisher-Miller colony, revised boundaries, and the addition of the upper road from El Paso. Evidence of the GLO's map being used as tools by the agency, this copy contains red and blue manuscript lines indicating transportation updates. A bold red line traces the Camino Real from Mexico to Natchitoches, Louisiana, and fainter red lines trace shipping and proposed rail routes. The blue line, perhaps another proposal, connects the post office at Industry to Belleville, then on to Houston and the port of Galveston. The most notable difference between the two maps is the oval inset in the lower right corner. The 1849 edition depicts Texas at its full extent, including Santa Fe County, which encompasses part of present-day New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. The 1851 map reflects Texas's configuration after the Compromise of 1850 and shows New Mexico reaching the Pacific Ocean. De Cordova published his map in 1849, 50, 51, and 53. He sold his publication rights to J.H. Colton and Company, who issued several later editions in New York from 1856 onward that carried the note revised and corrected by Charles W. Pressler, another notable land office draftsman. The map remained at the center of De Cordova's Texas boosterism, which he sustained for the rest of his life. He wrote two books and lectured throughout the U.S. and Europe about the benefits of Texas for potential settlers. He claimed that the land was so well suited for production that no man need own slaves, though while recruiting potential settlers and investors, he did offer an endorsement of the institution. Despite his great wealth in land and capital, De Cordova fell into financial hardship during the Civil War and never recovered. He died in 1868. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Stauffer, who is going to finish the rest of the presentation, if I can figure that out.
Thanks, James. Let's see if we can make this a seamless handover.
Oh, boy. Brian, are you there?
I'm here. Do you hear me?
Oh, I hear you, yeah.
James, if you can stop your sharing, Brian can go ahead and share.
Well, I'm sorry about that. That's the problem.
There we go.
How's that? Y'all see it?
Seamless as possible.
All right.
Yes, you're on.
Cool. Great. So I'm going to be talking about the second part of this book, Developing Texas, which we've named it. The first part, as you saw, dealt with kind of the slow and conflictual configuration of Texas's external boundaries through various kinds of conflict and activity. This section mostly deals with internal development after 1850, after those borders were more or less formed. And internal development includes things like military mapping, the creation of a system of forts, industry and infrastructure, specifically railroads. Railroad development is really something we have a lot of records about here at the GLO. As well as internal administration, and here I mean things like the creation of county boundaries and a creation of a county land system. And then also planning and laying out cities. All of that requires mapping. I'm going to stick to 3 maps in my section so that there's time for me to give you all a little taste of the Beyond the Neat Line features that James mentioned at the beginning. And so I won't be talking about a railroad map. So if you're a railroad map fan, I'm sorry, you're going to have to just buy the book. So let's start with the military map. This is the correct map of the seat of war in Mexico from 1847. And it's another great example of maps as both products and agents of history. The U.S.-Mexican War shaped U.S. cartography in the most dramatic way since the Louisiana Purchase. The taking of over half of Mexico's territory advanced the so-called manifest destiny of American transcontinental control and brought corresponding changes to maps of the area. But maps weren't just for charting territory. They also served to give the American public both a source of patriotic pride and a look into the workings of the war from a distance. And this map really corresponds with the kind of beginning of a mass commercial market in maps in the United States. So it was a big item. Published by cartographer John Disturnell and designed by J.G. Brough of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, this is one of the most significant maps of the U.S.-Mexican War. It provided the American military with with a most complete view of northern Mexico since Stephen F. Austin and Henry Tanner's 1830 map. It's much wider in scope and it's much more detailed than that map is. This map covers territory stretching as far north as the Nueces River and Corpus Christi, as well as parts or all of 11 Mexican states, and as far south as Puebla and Mexico City. General Zachary Taylor's army of 2,200 soldiers, including many notable Texas Rangers, defeated 3,700 Mexican forces led by General Mariano Arista at the battles of Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma on May 8th and 9th, 1846. When Arista's forces hastily retreated, they left a treasure trove of valuable items, including a detailed manuscript map of northern Mexico. Disturnell based his seat of war on that stolen manuscript. The significance of this plundered chart cannot be overstated, and the quote that's on the screen here from one of Taylor's volunteers can give you a really good sense of how important this was to their operations. General Arista had deep connections to the area, all of which he documented on the captured manuscript. The map essentially acted as a key to northern Mexico for the American Army. It provided intelligence on towns, roads, water, sites for water, and exclusive details on Mexican topography that were previously unavailable to the Americans, aiding Taylor's push further south and contributing to the eventual American victory. For the American people, an all-out war with Mexico initiated a flurry of commercial map printing activity for an audience eager to learn more about their adversary. Disturnell's map helped Americans better understand the geography of war and strengthened a desire to solidify claims on lands south of the Nueces River that had been in dispute since Texas's independence from Mexico. For the Mexican people, maps like Disturnell's helped the government better understand its northern frontier at the close of the war. J.G. Brough designed the Disturnell map. In his position in Washington, D.C., he had early access to the Arista manuscript. He likely brought news of it to Disturnell, and he encouraged its publication for a wider audience. The map includes embellishments, presumably drawn by Brough, including a menacing American bald eagle atop a shield with banners emblazoned with stars and stripes, and a charging U.S. dragoon galloping over two fallen Mexican soldiers that you see in the upper right there. Because of Brough's additions, the map also acted as nationalistic propaganda to support the war effort. The map also features a memorandum describing the battles and capture of Palo Alto and Monterrey. Insets show a plan of Monterrey, Tampico and its environments, and the chart of the Bay of Veracruz. A table of distances between Mexican cities appears below the eagle, and a list of elevations of towns and mountains is at the bottom next to the title block. The map shows towns, ranches, estates, differentiates between good and bad roads and mule tracks, and indicates towns captured by American forces with flag symbols. So now we'll jump to a part of the GLO's collection that really sets it off from other Texas map collections. County cadastral or land ownership maps are the cartographic foundations of Texas's land system. Each of Texas's 254 counties has their own series of historical maps held at the GLO, charting the original land grants issued within their boundaries, in some cases dating back to Spanish sovereignty in Texas. The example we have here for you today is a map of Travis County from 1894 by Herman Pressler. Herman Pressler, the son of a renowned GLO chief draftsman Carl Wilhelm Pressler, also known as Charles Pressler, had a distinguished career at the agency. He is credited on 26 county maps drafted from 1881 to 1899. During his tenure, the drafting department began to compile county cadastral maps at a scale of 2,000 varas per inch instead of 4,000. This change improved the presentation and the fine details and doubled the average size of new maps. By 1898, Pressler and his colleagues had redrawn 140 county maps at this scale, including this map of Travis County, measuring nearly 5 feet wide. In many ways, Pressler's map is typical of those in the GLO's collection. It shows the original land grants, towns, roads, rivers, and numerous railroads, and any other notations or features called for in survey field notes submitted to the agency. It also hints at an unusual aspect of local and state history relevant to the ownership of the land on which the state capitol building now stands. In 1838, several early settlers began locating Republic of Texas land certificates on the north bank of the Colorado River and founded the village of Waterloo. The following year, Mirabeau B. Lamar, the new president of the Republic, made plans to move the capital city inland from Houston, and the government site selection committee chose this remote territory surrounding the small town at Lamar's urging. The government purchased 7,735 acres from 8 settlers in the area, establishing what was assumed to be clear title to the land. However, an unforeseen complication arose on February 7th, 1840, when Land Commissioner John P. Borden received a 31-page Mexican title for Thomas Jefferson Chambers, dated June 20th, 1835. The title represented 29 leagues and 13 labores of land in various locations across the state, including 8 leagues in present-day Travis County. And if you're in Austin today, there's a very good chance that you are standing on land that was at one time claimed by Chambers in the Chambers Grant. Chambers was a notable land speculator, surveyor, lawyer, and financier of the Texas Revolution. Under the Mexican government, he served as a superior judge of the Circuit Court of Texas beginning in 1834. As compensation, he received $3,000 annually, payable in land, at the rate of $100 per league. Since Chambers had prior claim to the land later chosen for Waterloo, the conflict had to be litigated. The Chambers family initiated a decade-long legal battle over title to the land. In the meantime, the city of Austin grew to cover much of the grant. The lawsuit was finally settled in 1925 when the Texas legislature authorized a $20,000 payment to Chambers' heirs to settle their claims. Here again, we can see Chambers' grant highlighted on the original 1894 map of Travis County, and the same grant overlaid over modern satellite imagery of the Austin area. The grant stretched from Colorado River all the way to and slightly over the Williamson County boundary. And I think that land might be worth just a bit more than $20,000 today. Finally, a historical marker adorns the location of Chambers' later home in Nanak, Chambers County, Texas. And we'll stick with the Austin theme here a little bit more. So far we've discussed maps drawn on scales ranging from hemispherical to continental, down to national and state and county. And so now we'll go one level further down to examine one of the most important city maps in the GLO's collection, and that's W.H. Sandusky's 1839 map of Austin. As you just heard, Texas President Mirabeau B. Lamar intended to transform the small hamlet of Waterloo into a new planned frontier city worthy of being the capital of the Republic of Texas. Surveyor Edwin Waller rose to the challenge of laying out the new capital. One member of Waller's surveying crew, draftsman William H. Sandusky, created this map in 1839, the first of the city of Austin, to make an orderly and useful city plan in compliance with the law creating the capital. This law specifically ordered that at, quote, some point between the rivers of Trinidad and Colorado and above the old San Antonio Road, end quote, the government should develop a sufficient number of lots to establish a capitol building and other public structures. The site selection committee purchased 7,735 acres at the town of Waterloo and transformed it into the city of Austin. Under Waller's direction, surveyors laid out the city in a grid pattern on 640 acres or a square mile between the Waller and Shoal Creeks on the northeast bank of the Colorado River. 4 square blocks were set aside as Capitol Square, located on a promontory with a broad avenue rising from a distant riverbank to meet it. Here, the land gently rose from the river's banks and crested at a hilltop, providing a perfect site for Austin's Congress Avenue, which endures as the central north-south route through the heart of downtown. With these details in mind, Waller tasked Sandusky with creating this initial view of Austin, and the GLO paid Sandusky $35 for his work. If you examine the map, you'll find some of Austin's now iconic landmarks, including Capitol Square, College Grove, which is approximately where UT Austin is now, Shoal, Waller, and Spring Creeks. Sandusky also identified the home of William Barton, near Spring Creek, now called Barton Creek, south of the river. An ornate title block and elaborate compass rose decorate the open space north of the planned city, and an extensive prairie appears to the east above the Colorado River. Sandusky described Austin in glowing terms, commenting on the, quote, two beautiful streams of limestone water that flow through the city, as well as the presence of ample building materials. Surrounding the town site is a stair-stepped outline representing 8 contiguous tracts. Bastrop County Deputy Surveyor Thomas H. Mays surveyed all of these in February 1838 by virtue of first-class headright certificates granted to the area's early settlers. The Republic compensated the original grantees between $3 and $3.50 per acre to secure the land, creating the new town tract or government tract, again totaling 7,734 acres. And the GLO, just to note, the GLO has GLO Archives has historic maps covering dozens of Texas cities, large and small, that help tell the story of the state's development on the local level. So make sure to go to our map store and see if we have maps of your city if you're interested. And I'm going to close by giving you all a quick taste of one of our Beyond the Neat Line features. Again, these are medium or sort of medium short-ish essays that bring together several maps in order to analyze them, analyze themes such as indigenous cartography or religious cartography, or to drill deeper on Texas-related stories or GLO-related stories, such as the work of a particular draftsman. This particular one that I'm going to show you here is looks at manuscript cartouches in the GLO county maps. Among the several thousand manuscript maps created by the GLO, a select few contain details that go beyond simply illustrating the disposition of public lands. In addition to charting thousands of land grants in every county, these maps also showcase the artistic ability of those who created them. Using a feature called a cartouche or title block, they offer aesthetic, symbolic, historic, and political narratives about Texas. And you can see the political narrative in this particular one for the city of Calhoun, which shows the Mexican eagle essentially being displaced from the nopal in Mexico's famous sort of national symbol by an actual Lone Star. So let's look at some other ones. Surveyor James H. Selkirk created this ornate cartouche on the 1839 map of Matagorda Bay and County, with the adjacent country. On the right, the goddess of liberty, dressed in a white gown, embodies the promise, glory, and supposed purity of the United States in the east. She holds a staff topped with a Phrygian cap, which symbolizes liberty, and stands before the U.S. Capitol, signifying order and power. On the left, a dark-skinned, lightly clothed American Indian male armed with bow and arrows stands in front of a thick brush in territory unsettled by Americans. This representation of the West in equal proportion to the East stands in contrast to the actual historical treatment of indigenous populations. Between the two figures sits a stack of bales and barrels, while ships in the distance underline the ongoing immigration and commercial trade that passed through Matagorda Bay, symbolically then connecting kind of the East and the West. The Lone Star that you see there between the figures suggests Texas's key role in opening the Western frontier. The juxtaposition of the quote-unquote civilized East with the quote-unquote barbaric West is a common motif of cartouches illustrating westward expansion, though this theme does not appear very often on GLO county maps. One of the most whimsical cartouches in the map collection appears on the 1859 map of Mason County by draftsman F.H. Arlett. 2 American flag banners and decorative cornucopias frame the title block, which also features a compass rose in the form of a Lone Star. Although there were 33 states in the United States at the time of this map's creation, Arlett presented a unique flag design with 23 stars and 15 stripes. One of the most striking elements of this cartouche is the artist's use of contorted human figures to form each letter of the county's name, including a few recognizable cultural icons. Well, recognizable in the 19th century, not so much for us mostly. For instance, the S appeared to be Punch, a 19th century British satirical character. The female dancer in the O is recognizable to followers of mid-19th century theater as Lola Montez, a famous performer and controversial figure of the time. Montez is believed to be the first female celebrity to be photographed holding a cigarette, an accessory considered to indicate loose morals. Her cigarette dangles from her hand, a surprisingly taboo subject for Arlett to illustrate on a otherwise nondescript county map. Conrad Streme created one of the more memorable cartouches of the GLO on this 1868 manuscript map, Houston County. The cartouche featured children climbing on grapevines that surround a figure that the GLO staff has lovingly referred to for a long time now as the drunk monk. The monk rests on a wooden barrel, a pitcher in one hand and a wine chalice in the other. Strame illustrated grapevines which flourish in the sandy soil in and around Houston County to suggest agricultural opportunity and abundance. The work also includes finely drawn spider webs reminiscent of the German Romanticism movement, which the German Texan Strame would have been familiar with. So now that we've seen some examples of cartouche art and GLO maps, the question remains, why did our draftsmen take such pains to decorate these maps in this way? Original county maps, after all, were not designed to actually leave the agency, since this would break the chain of possession and provide opportunities for altering official government records. Thus, GLO map makers did not anticipate exhibiting their maps outside the agency. Rather, the county maps were internal working documents in nearly constant use by agency clerks and those looking for a new plat of land or to contest a conflicting survey, for example. With such a limited audience, then why did the draftsmen bother to go to such lengths to decorate them? We can only speculate that for multitasking GLO draftsmen, cartouches were simply art for art's sake. After spending hundreds of hours tediously and carefully inking lines and labeling hundreds of surveys on a single map, draftsmen could clear their minds by doing something to break up the monotony of the assignment at hand. Present-day draftsmen acknowledge that it is common in the field to include artwork on even the most austere or rudimentary maps to personalize their work. Cartouches expressed authorship beyond simply adding a signature. Certainly no GLO employees could have envisioned digitization and reproduction efforts over a century later that would allow instant access to the intricate work initially intended for such a limited audience. As a result, the cartouches have seemingly outlived the original life and intent of the maps themselves, and they provide perspective on how 19th century draftsmen at the GLO might have viewed their work and ultimately how they might have viewed Texas. So that's an example of one of our Beyond the Neat Line features, and I'm going to finish up my comments here with just a few words about something I just mentioned, which was archival digitization, something that really made this book possible for us in the first place, especially given what James talked about, how we did a lot of this work during the COVID pandemic. We did that from home, with access to all of these maps. For nearly 2 decades, then, the Texas General Land Office has pioneered Texas cartography and has played a vital role in the state's momentous territorial transformations. As Texas's unappropriated public domain diminished, the GLO shifted its focus from issuing land grants and preserving those records to the equally important tasks of a modern government bureaucracy. In the normal course of the agency's business, its map collection chronicles the past, it supports governance, it informs decision makers regarding the present-day administration of state lands. Such everyday cartographic work is foundational to the GLO's mission, and preserving and providing access to those records is a mandate that the GLO Archives takes really seriously. Historically, this mandate has meant developing preservation and access procedures in tandem with technological developments. In its early days, for example, the agency provided access to maps, sketches, documents, and drawings by making transcriptions, providing translations, and producing map tracings by hand. Over the last 25 years, the internet ushered in the agency's most transformative technology for improving public access and preservation, and that is digitization. You can see an action shot here. Archival digitization is the process of converting physical records, maps, and artifacts into digital formats. The GLO was an early adopter of this technology. In 2000, the agency began employing high-resolution scanning with a group of maps in its collection, thus marking a new era of archival preservation and access. Since 2000, the agency has digitized over 4.5 million documents and maps, or about 200,000 items per year, including most of the GLO's 45,000-plus item map collection. This ambitious project has produced significant benefits, including improved accessibility to GLO records. Then this accessibility has taken many forms, but it has also led at the GLO to significant projects with geographic information systems, or GIS programs, that analyze and display geospatial data. For instance, the agency maintains an interactive tool that cross-references GIS data with original land grant records. The tool allows users to connect present-day locations with historical maps and survey data. which allows anyone to create a custom map showing present-day land divisions in relation to historical land grants, which can be further enhanced by adding layers of things like, for example, pipelines or oil and gas wells. GLO staff have also embarked on ambitious digital mapping projects that may have been difficult, if not impossible, in the past without the aid of digitized original archival material. These projects use historical data and GIS technology to update archival maps. In doing so, they simplify complicated geographic information for modern students and researchers and promote spatial literacy among lay audiences. Additionally, the digitization efforts have helped seamlessly integrate GLO historical maps into interactive exhibits, multimedia presentations, and educational resources such as TSHA's Handbook of Texas History. This map of the events of the Texas Revolution appears there now, along with several dozen other maps. So as current stewards of the agency's map collection, we know that we're not the first or will be the last to appreciate the treasures in the GLO's archival vaults. Each map or document in our collection tells the story of a person or group, of a time and place and circumstance. The significance of any given record might vary for the many historians, genealogists, surveyors, and landmen who use GLO maps and documents. Along these lines, Texas Takes Shape represents the perspective of the oldest state agency in Texas, which was pivotal in the creation, collection, and digitization of so many of these maps. Our book attempts to tell as comprehensive a history of Texas cartography as possible, building on the base layers of those indigenous informants, scouts, surveyors, map makers, historians, and researchers who came before us. We hope that the book, along with the agency's map collection, will encourage readers to seek out how their own Texas stories can take shape. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you both. I am going to unpin you both so that we can see everybody. It's we have quite a few people with us right now, so we won't be able to see everybody, but here we have the full tile with names. Thank you, James and Brian, for that presentation and all of that information and those beautiful maps that you shared with us. I was kind of looking at them and going, these are really pieces of, I mean, they are pieces of art. I mean, they were created for a purpose, and it was geopolitical, but they're pieces of art that you all have done such an incredible job preserving. So thank you for that. We do have a few questions, and I would encourage everyone to just drop your questions in the chat box. As you think of them, I'm going to go all the way up to the top. I do want to say thank you to one of your colleagues, M. Lambert. I'm not quite sure what who that person is.
It would be
co-author.
Mark Lambert, who is one of the authors of the book.
Well, there you go, Mark. Thank you so much for joining and answering the questions in the chat box. Really appreciate it. There were people asking where they can get the book or copies of certain maps, and Mark was kind enough to share that information. Let's see, I'm going to go to the top, and I think the question about the ornaments has been answered, and about the map, one of the maps that you were referring to, the Alamo Defenders Heritage Map of Texas. Mark shared the information about that. Meg asks, and Mark, I think answered, but I'll throw the question out anyway. What materials are some of these early maps made of, and what kind of inks and paints were used by early map makers? Were they informed by the location that the maps were being made, or did cartographers travel with materials they'd need?
Kind of both is the answer. For most of the GLO maps, the county maps that were made, those are usually done in Austin. There would be surveyors who would go out into the field, and in their field books, they would make tiny sketches along with field notes describing the sizes and shapes of their surveys. And then it was up to the draftsman at the land office to actually plot those out on county maps as they were being formed.
And they carried their materials with them, or I'm guessing that they did.
They certainly carried some materials with them, usually, like small sketchbooks and things like, or rather field books. And they would have done some kind of preliminary mapping out in the field, although most of that is going to be done later somewhere else.
Right.
And as far as the materials, I mean, I don't think we have anything, unfortunately, I don't think we have anything like really exotic, like on animal skin or anything like that. Um, our maps are they're done on high quality paper, and the further you go back, the higher the quality of the paper tends to be. They're longer fibers essentially in the paper before the industrial processes are introduced, and so that paper holds up really well. That's part of the reason that they last so long. These maps.
So,
Yeah, to add on to that, usually the older maps seem to be in much better shape than maps that were made in the 19th century. Maps in the 19th century, the paper was usually more acidic, and so they were also using iron gall ink through a lot of the manuscript process, and so iron gall ink will oftentimes burn through the paper, and that's why you'll see on a lot of our you can look at a map from the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s and say, well, why is it in so much worse shape than a map that was made in 1530, 1540, 1550? That's because the paper was just such a higher quality than what was available in the Republican early state of Texas. That's probably as much as I can get into the science of paper and ink for anybody. That would be a topic that Mark Lambert has done a lot more research on, and there's also good research in Martin and Martin's book that we referenced at the beginning from 1980 and reprinted in 1999.
Mark, if I could request you to come off camera and on camera, off mute, and share your thoughts, because you do talk about woodcuts and steel engravings. I'm wondering if those were created after the map had been finalized to then make duplicates of those maps. I mean, I cannot imagine them creating a woodcut as the final map itself. Or maybe they did. Maybe that's how it was done. Can you talk a little bit more about that process?
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Well, I was referencing our earliest maps, which would have been woodcut. Well, to start with, when the question came, it was we were showing the connected map, which is a manuscript map, which was manuscript hand-drawn map by Borden and his brothers. But going back to the 1500s, maps would have started as woodcuts. A woodcut, you probably could have gotten 100 to 1,000 copies out of a woodcut. So basically putting the map impression in reverse on a piece of wood and then pressing paper on it is the simplest way to describe it. The wood wears down, and so you can see early woodcuts now that have indentations in them after hundreds of copies were made, but that's how the earliest atlases were made. Then you move into engravings, which would have been on a sheet of bronze, or later steel would hold up better, and probably 1,000 copies of a map or thousands of copies. But the GLO maps, our county cadastral maps, are basically drawn by hand by our draftsmen. But as James said, they started by probably a sketch by a surveyor out in the field. There's actually a brand name for a surveyor's sketchbook, and if you can imagine big deep pockets that are in a military uniform or something, they'd go out on the frontier with a surveyor sketchbook and do their sketch of what we call the meets and bounds, the hopefully four corners of a survey. But you have to look at a particular map to be able to kind of figure out how it was made, when it was made. The earliest maps, I think, would have had natural dyes used on them. But then, of course, the commercial period, which I would say 19th, 20th century, were petroleum-based colors, inks. But it's hard to generalize. But I can answer specific questions, I guess. But as James said, the best description of that is in Martin and Martin, which we don't want to reference because it's a 40-year-old book, but it's still really good. It describes the printing process really good for maps.
Thank you, Mark. Does the GLO have any of these woodcuts or the steel engravings or lithographs in its collection? I'm just curious because those would be priceless.
I think we have one, don't we, Mark? I think we have one steel or copper plate, but in general, not really.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Pam Cosby asks, oh, before that, Kathy Fielder asks, would you please explain the historical use of varas or the units used to define properties? When was the vara first used and when did it fall out of use? Information I saw for a Cook County property uses varas to define property boundaries.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to take that one, James?
Yeah.
Please.
The vara is a very old unit of measurement. The name it's in Spanish. It's a Spanish term. It was brought over by Spanish colonials. The term vara means staff. It means stick, essentially. And I assume that's the kind of thing that would have been used, an actual stick that you could sort of flip over and over end to sort of make measurements. The vara itself had different measurements depending on where and when you looked. So, for example, Spain had one vara. In Mexico, it's kind of another one. In other parts of Latin America, it's the length is slightly different, right? And so, one of the early challenges of people like Stephen F. Austin, when he starts setting up his impresario colony, is they're going to have to use the vara because that's the local unit of measurement, but no one's sure exactly how long a vara should be, and so his surveyors are out in the field just kind of experimenting with it. They're mostly Anglo. They have come in from the United States, mostly from the southern United States. They're used to a slightly different surveying culture. So they have different tools and they're set at different lengths and things like that. But again, the maps and land grants have to be recorded in varas because that's the local standard. And so they kind of experiment with this thing a little bit. They try different things. At one point, in fact, we have a really priceless and one of a kind plat map of the town of San Felipe de Austin, which was the headquarters of Austin's colony, kind of on the way to Houston now. And they, in that, they actually set a vara of, I think it's something like 32.8 inches. So they say right from the start, this is the vara that we're using. This is the one we've decided on. But then there's more trial and error, and eventually they kind of land on, well, why can't we just make this thing 33 1/3 inches? And then it's much easier for calculation, essentially. And so what they did was they adapted those chains that they use, the surveyor chains, they adapted them to this new 33 1/3 inch standard. So they'll have like 10 vara chains, for example. And that, again, that made calculation much easier. And the 33 1/3 inch vara, after Texas breaks away from Mexico, remains the unit of measurement, and today is still the unit of measurement in Texas. One of the things that makes us a bit unique. Did I cover everything, James? I think.
Thank you. There was a question about how to visit the archives. Mark did drop in the link to email the GLO to schedule a visit. So if you haven't, those of you who are interested, if you haven't seen that, please check the chat box, and we will include this link in our email tomorrow as well. So
yeah, we're located right next door to the Bullock Museum in Austin, Texas, on what used to be Congress Avenue and is now the Capitol Mall. We usually like to have groups of, if you can have a group of you and 3 or 4 or 5 of your closest friends and you want to come in and look at maps, we'd love to spend an hour with you. And it's always better this is an active archive, so it is better to make an appointment in advance by emailing archives@glo.texas.gov.
thank you. Ben Turner asks, and I think this was right after, Brian, you were talking about overlaying the historic maps with GIS to kind of, see how they match up. How is that overlay accessed, the present tracks to older maps? Can you talk a little bit about the process?
How is it accessed? Can you find the?
Yeah, if you've done that overlay, where does one see that?
Okay, sure. Yeah, there's a couple of places that I was kind of talking about. One is the agency. It's not actually Archives and Records, but the agency has a geospatial. Is it a division or is it a team? It's a geospatial team, and they maintain a tool called the Land and Lease Mapping Viewer. Hopefully, Mark can drop in the chat, or I can drop in the chat the actual URL to that. And that's one of the tools I was talking about. So that's a beautiful GIS map of Texas. If you zoom down, if you just start zooming down on it, you'll see the original land grant layer there, right? So present day Texas is superimposed upon that old land grant layer. And then you can click any of those land grants and it'll actually not only tell you information about the land grant, but also give you a link to the digitized archival file itself. So you can see in some cases like Spanish land grants, you can click, see what the polygon looks like where that land was, learn more about who was the grantee, and then go to the actual land grant itself. And then the other thing is that map I showed of the events of the Texas Revolution in 1836, that's another GIS project that we've been doing. We call them GIS educational maps. And the idea is essentially maps that can be used for classroom use based on topics that are important to the land office. And so there's a whole bunch of those that have been done by teams, including our education outreach team and the geospatial team and their interns. And those are located on our map website, historictexasmaps.com, on a place called Showcase. So I can also drop that one in the chat. Or do you want to, James?
Got it.
We have a question from Taylor who asks, does the GLO see the use of AI in any way in the work that you do?
There will inevitably be some type of tool that AI will be able to help with. There's not anything that we've seen that really blows us away at this point that we would think that we would want to incorporate AI into what we're doing. I have seen projects at Stanford. I think it's at Stanford. What is that library called? Anyways, at Stanford, where I believe they use AI to read names on maps on old historic maps to be able to tell to where you could do a search for every time that the word I don't know, Apache appears on a map, and it will read through the maps. It can be really difficult to read those really old maps that have hundreds, if not thousands, of names on them because the text is just so small. And that's something where I think AI could be used better than probably everybody who's on this call's eyes could do. So I think that's probably the best option for AI as far as our maps are concerned. Otherwise, we like whenever people do work.
Thank you. I think Cindy asks a question that I was thinking about as well, which is because we have so many people joining this session from different parts of the state and beyond. Can you maybe share, names of other locations, universities, museums that have good, solid map collections that people can go visit that might
Absolutely.
be closer to where they are? The one that I've visited is the Museum of the Big Bend, which is just absolutely incredible. They've got an amazing collection as well. But please, if you can share.
Yeah, I would say that the Texas State Library and Archives, they have got a great map collection. The Briscoe Center at UT, the Ransom Center, and also the Benson at UT all have really good map collections. They each do something different. The Benson focuses on Spanish and Latin America, and they've got some really cool manuscript maps of various cities in Mexico. The Ransom Center has got a lot of European and kind of what I would say like old world maps. There's one of Venice that I saw whenever I visited that is like 7 feet long and 3 or 4 feet wide. It's just so cool. So that I think that covers UT and the Austin area. In the Dallas area, I would say that UT Arlington, their cartographic library is one of the best in the world. They've got some very unique items that are both very relevant to Texas as well as the rest of the U.S. And I believe that they're currently collecting African maps and maps of Antarctica. UT Arlington, yes. Where else? SMU at the DeGolyer Library, they've got a really good map collection. Where else? The Newberry Library in Chicago is one of the great places outside of Texas. The New York Public Library has got a really phenomenal collection. There are several places out in California at Brian, can you remember what's the library at Stanford?
I don't remember the name.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find that real fast.
Rumsey.
The Rumsey collection, that's right.
Did you say the Osher in Maine?
Yeah, the Osher Library in Maine. These are probably some of the highlighted map collections that I would say. There's also in Houston. Mark, what's the one in Houston? At the Julia Idison building.
The Houston Metropolitan Research Center. Huh?
Yeah, the Houston Metropolitan Research Center at the Idison building in Houston. I say that's a really neat collection there. Almost every university in the state has got some type of really good map collection or some type of collection. I visited Texas Tech a couple years ago, and they had some really neat stuff. They had a lot of really neat globes as well. I think that would probably be where I would say live there. And if you get beyond that, you're doing more than I am.
Thank you. Well, if you get a
like-
moment today, at some point, or maybe early tomorrow morning, if you can just email us that list, we will add that to the email that goes out, I think, for folks that are interested.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So can I jump in real quick? It looked like a part of that question was also about does the GLO work with
Right.
other organizations to digitize? And we absolutely do. So if your organization or you personally have a collection of historic maps, get in touch with us. We can help you. We have state-of-the-art equipment to digitize them. We have a great map website now where we're hosting them. So we're always willing to talk about that.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, we've been trying to build the most comprehensive Texas map collection online as we can. And so working with other institutions and private collections is one of our goals, to be able to, even though we've got 45,000 maps, there's a whole lot more of stuff that we don't have of Texas in particular. So working with private collectors, working with other institutions is in a lot of ways one of the only times that we'll be able to provide access. And because maps are kind of our thing, we want to be able to provide that service to the people of Texas.
Thank you so much. Mark Sells asks, do you have any copies of the Texas map with the claimed strip out to the Pacific Ocean?
There's nothing that's jumping out to me of Texas reaching the Pacific Ocean, but I seem to remember that President Lamar wanted to stretch Texas all the way to the Pacific. If that was mapped, I don't know that I've seen a map that shows that, but we've got all sorts of maps of Texas where it's stretching up into Wyoming in kind of the classic Republic of Texas shape.
Yep. We have a question about, does the GLO have any of the original surveyor sketchbooks or notebooks?
We do. And actually, let's see, surveyor sketch. Yes, we do have a lot of those, what do they call it? English field note books. Yep. Would be part of the Spanish collection. That would have been whenever there were English or American land surveyors in Austin's colony, they would do something to where they make their English field notes and then they bring it back to Austin's office and they translate that into Spanish, which was the official language of business in Texas prior to 1836. And the agency has held on to those. Recently, there's a surveyor in Brown County, I believe, named Don King, who donated a lot of Pioneer land surveying equipment. So we've got a lot of compasses and things like that that were recently donated, and that's just within the last 6 or 7 months. So in addition to maps, we're also developing collections of how people made maps.
Thank you. Lydia, I'm assuming you got the links, but we will put all of these links in our email tomorrow so you can explore on your, at your convenience. Thank you, Mark, for adding context to some of the answers. And I'm just going through the questions to see if Nancy asks, do you have any of James Kerr's materials?
It sounds familiar to me. That sounds like an old 300, maybe. One of the grantees of Austin's original colony. I know we'll have his land grant, for example. If he's an old 300, we would have let's see, the books kept by Austin, like the registro that would have him in it. There may be other things that I'm missing here. James, do you know anything offhand? But I mean, we definitely have James Kerr records.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's an old 300 guy. I not off the top of my head, other than his original land grants.
Yeah, and that stuff is all digitized and on our land grant database. And I don't think we've provided a link to that, so I'm going to drop that in the chat right now.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're coming to the end of our questions. I just wanted to make a quick pitch to all of our attendees. These events are made possible with your support. So if you can please consider a gift to the Friends of the THC, we would really appreciate that. But more than that, we appreciate your participation every month in these events. So please keep your eyes open for the next one coming out. Again, I mentioned August 14th. We look forward to bringing another fun event to you. In the meantime, I think Lorelai is putting some stuff in the chat box for you to look at. We will send an email out tomorrow. Tracy, my colleague here, will be doing that with all of the links, all of the resources. And thank you. We really, truly appreciate your time. These events usually go longer than the 1 hour we schedule for them, and we appreciate you hanging in with us. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, James. Thank you, Mark, for being on and participating. We really, really appreciate your time, your expertise, and we look forward to sharing your book with everybody. Congratulations.
Thank you for letting us talk about it with you and your fans, you and your supporters. And we're always happy to if there's one thing that whenever you talk to a historian or somebody who loves history, they want to talk about it. And so maps are to us like descendants and people who lived 100 years ago are to genealogists. We won't stop talking about it, and we love sharing it with people who are also interested. We really encourage people to schedule tours of the General Land Office archives Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 o'clock. And we hope that people will sign up for the Save Texas History Symposium in November and go to historictexasmaps.com to buy a copy of this book.
Thank you. Thank
Great.
you so much. Thank you all. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks,
Take
y'all.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.